This is, please work. I don't know if anybody can hear anything. Checking, checking. Any sound yet? I can't tell.
Yes. You did it.
Is it working?
You did it.
Oh my God, that was so stressful.
Good work. Oh, I'm so sorry. It was so stressful.
No.
That's terrible.
I'm just happy that it worked.
It totally worked. Thanks for hanging in there.
No, you too. Thank you everybody that's watching for hanging in there too. And we're in these crazy tech times now.
It's like sometimes it's all super smooth, and then sometimes like the audio just totally flakes and you don't know what's going on. So
it's all good. We made it.
So much, Evan. We are so grateful to have this time with you. I mean, incredibly grateful. I don't know if all of your audience follower folks know, but our paths crossed quite a few years ago because you're an advocate for survivors of domestic violence. But once we met out in California, we quickly realized that we were both boy moms, and our boys had some things in common as well. And that's really what led us to sit here today. So thank you for this time.
Thank you so much for letting me do this. I never do any Instagram lives, but this was a special occasion because I love A Call to Men so much. And as you said, especially as a single mom raising a boy, the resources and the education I've received from A Call to Men has just been invaluable to me. So thank you.
Well, that means the world to us. So we're pumped to get the book out there.
Absolutely. So for those of you that don't know, this is Anna Marie Johnson Teague, and she is the Chief Communications Officer for A Call to Men, but she's also just co-authored this book, The Book of Dares, 100 Inspiring Creative Fun Challenges for Boys, and it's based on the work of A Call to Men. So tell me about the Book of Dares.
I will. So I wrote the Book of Dares with my friend and colleague, Ted Bunch. And Ted and I are parents and we're anti-violence educators. And over the years, we've really noticed a gap in the market for content for boys that talked about healthy masculinity and healthy relationships and consent and boundaries and helped them develop empathy and promoted emotional literacy and supported social emotional learning. And so the Book of Dares is designed to fill that gap and to do that heavy lifting, but at the same time be fun and accessible for boys and parents. And I remember when Jack started school, and he's 12 years old now, so that was quite a few years ago. But when he was starting school, I was really searching for content that reinforced celebrating authenticity. That was a value that was really important to me in our household. So I feel like, when they get to that school age and all the way through middle school, which is where we are now, differences are considered weaknesses. And what we should really be doing is teaching our kids to celebrate that uniqueness, And so we've written a lot of dares into the book that help boys identify the things that they might call out in somebody and praise them instead. And this not only helps them build trust and deepen their own friendships, but this is the really beautiful thing that gets me all jazzed up. It helps boys embrace their own differences, and it's going to help them love themselves. Like we all have those special things that make us unique, and it's going to help develop that self-love. And at A Call to Men, when we talk about promoting authenticity, we just want our kids to be who they were created to be, not who the world says they should be. I want Jack to know that he can be tough and strong. Absolutely. He can also be kind-hearted and expressive. He can love basketball and golf. He can also love theater and art. I want to celebrate all of him, not just the parts that society deem are important to his boyhood and eventually his manhood.
Right. Could not agree more. Happy whole person. So why did you settle on the concept of dares to get this point across?
Yeah, so we spoke with thousands of boys across the country and internationally as well. And they all said the same thing, that they were terrified of dares. They were afraid of the embarrassment, the shame, of the
Oh,
that judgment. They felt like it was a call to be tough and to prove their manhood. And that was so interesting that there were all these different man box, traditional masculinity tendencies tied up in this concept of dares. But all that aside, those boys told us unanimously that they were fascinated with dares and with dare culture. Um, and that they really wanted, that it felt like there was an intrigue there, and that it was a little like living on the edge. And so that's really why we went with the concept, but we flipped it. You know, we turned it into 100 positive challenges that all ladder up to promoting healthy manhood and authenticity and gender equity. But we wanted those boys, like if you can picture your son and my son at the book fair or in Barnes and Noble when we can go out in public again, um, or at the library, looking at the bookshelf and they see that book and it's like, ooh, Book of Dares, what is that? Because it's familiar and it's fun and it's intriguing to them. So we wanted that draw to be there.
right. No, that makes
So
sense.
has your son come home talking about dares yet?
No, he hasn't come home talking about dares, but what really surprised me was just how quickly the stereotypes were kind of forced onto him by other kids, or not forced onto him, but like just very quickly. Like he used to love Mulan, and he used to love Wonder Woman, and this is before he had any idea that the outside world might think less of him because he looks up to a woman in power. And so he used to dress like Wonder Woman, he used to dress like Mulan, and then he started going to school wearing the costumes, and it was like overnight that was gone. This was preschool, so you're talking about your son being in middle school now, but do you think that it starts even sooner than that?
Absolutely. I remember in first grade, Jack came home and said, boys rule, girls drool. First grade. And so, I mean, I think those things, the Tony and Ted and the trainers at A Call to Men, they say sexism's in the air we breathe, So yeah. It's just all around us. And that those are the things that having a book like this just allows us, it just gives us a tool to push back against that a little bit in a way that's not preachy, right?
Yeah, no one likes to be preached to, especially young kids. It's like the last thing. Okay, so it's fun for boys, but it's more than that. So it's designed to help them develop emotional literacy. Why do you think that is so important?
So emotional literacy is just a fancy word for being able to recognize and express how you're feeling, right? So when we ask
just a little insignificant life
right?
skill that we might need.
Maybe. So when we ask our boys, how are you? What do they say? I'm good. And they say I'm good whether they're good or not. Right. That's just what boys are conditioned to do. So we have to make an effort with boys, especially with boys, to push past that. And so often as parents, I feel like, and I'll just speak for myself, I am a type A problem solving mama in charge. I find that when Jack comes to me with a problem, my inclination is to offer a solution, right? Like I want to fix it. So from the time he was little bitty, I had to slow down. I had to really make an effort to slow down and to listen to what was going on with him, and to stop before I tried to offer any big parent wisdom, and ask him how what was going on made him feel, right?
Right.
And that allowed him to be able to articulate, it made me sad, or it made me nervous, or it made me excited. It's not all crying and tears we're trying to get him to articulate. It's all the happy stuff too. It's joy. It's excitement. It's just being able to label their feelings, right? Mm-hmm. So that's emotional literacy. That's what it is. And the research shows that children who have a more developed emotional literacy, they're better problem solvers, they have healthier relationships, and they're going to be more successful in their personal and professional lives. So the reason it's important to be intentional with boys is because the world is out there telling them to man up, to suck it up, that boys don't cry, and to stop acting like a girl.
Yeah.
So when we tell our boys not to cry, we're telling them not to feel. We're saying, take that emotion and stuff it way down deep. And that might work for a minute, but eventually it's going to come out, and it's probably going to come out as anger.
Mm-hmm. And it's so hurtful. You know, we're asking them to be less than what they are. And I really understood that more after having a boy and noticing the messages that the world was sending him that I didn't quite notice before. And, you know, realizing that boys are not bad. They're not inherently bad. They don't inherently want to hurt people or be angry. We're depriving them of this crucial life skill, and that to me is a form of abuse. And I think what we really need to start reframing this as, you know, you're really doing more harm than good here. So yeah, I absolutely agree.
Right. One of the, you know, Jack he played Little League Baseball for a while. He was probably 7 years old, Evan, when this happened. A really good player hit a line drive. He was playing third base, and it hit right like 2 feet before him, and it popped up and it hit him in the face. And I mean, blood went everywhere, and I went flying out of those stands. And he was little, like he's a little kid. Once he got into the dugout, the coaches were all around him. And once we figured out that he hadn't like lost teeth or broken a nose or shattered a cheekbone, and like really and truly, like it was that close. It was just a bunch of blood in his mouth. But the coaches praised him so much for being tough. And once he stopped crying, it just showed me, and these are well-intentioned people, right? Like they're not,
of course,
nobody's trying to do harm in the moment.
No.
It's just what they're teaching in the process is so damaging, right?
Yes. And this, I think we're learning this in this new generation of boys that we're raising. And I know it's something that I've certainly been aware of. Like you were saying, how as parents, our instinct is to fix something. And if even with girls, we do this, you know, when you see somebody crying, you want to go, oh, don't cry. No, stop. And it's, you know, I try to explain to people, I'm like, look, crying is the body's natural response to stress hormones. It's cortisol coming out through your tear ducts. It is a bodily function that serves a purpose to release stress hormones so that we can calm down, you know, and we're denying this very simple bodily function, you know, and we put all this stigma around this thing that is so, you know, vital to us just feeling better. And I wonder where that originated, you know, when crying became unacceptable. I would love to know. So do all the dares in the book connect to the values that A Call to Men promotes?
So yes, so all the dares in the book are written to promote healthy manhood, gender equity, and authenticity. And they're really grounded in 2 parts: practical parenting strategies, because all of our team are parents, and 20 years of work we've done at A Call to Men working with men and boys. And that's from all the professional sports leagues to the military to corporate boardrooms, community-based organizations. We say from the barbershop to the boardroom. So we are working everywhere there's men and boys. And many of the dares are things that we're doing or have done with our own children. Like I remember, this is probably just 2 weeks ago, and this is super common, and I feel like this is a really relatable one, but dare to think about a song's lyrics is in the book. And 2 weeks ago, we're in the car and Jack's bebopping along. He's singing along to a song on the radio, and I can tell that he knows the words, but he doesn't understand what he's saying. You know, he likes the song, and it's a good song, okay, and that's fine. So I told him to pull the lyrics up, because now all the lyrics are on every phone. You know, you can just pull them right on up. And we walked through line by line, and we talked about the positive aspects of the song, how the singer had overcome some really hard stuff, poverty, violence. And we talked about the negative aspects of the song, objectification of women and treating women like property, and what that really means, you know, and what you're really saying. And so at A Call to Men, we don't feel like censorship is really even possible. So we're not advocating for censorship. And we're not saying don't listen to this genre of music, because it's everywhere. you know, and it's not just in music, it's in movie. It's coming at our kids from all directions.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is teach our kids to be critical consumers, right? We just want them to first be aware of what they're watching and listening to. And second, make intentional decisions about how that's affecting their beliefs and their actions.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That is one thing I am proud to watch my son do, because every now and then we'll watch a movie, you know, from the 80s or 90s, and you have to, you know, sort of sit with them while you're watching these films if they were made before a certain year, because it's almost certain there's going to be something in there, even subtly, you know, that you might miss if you're not really paying attention, that is going to have major implications on how he relates to the world and how he relates to women and himself.
For sure.
Either objectifying women or portraying men as, you know, just like these like horny, like, you know, one track mind, just one dimensional beings. And I always remind him that, you know, all guys aren't like this. You don't have to act like this. Or like, hey, you know, this movie was made before we had kind of grown up a bit, and just know that, like, and I explained to him that, you know, these are old jokes and we know better now. And like, and he gets that. And now he'll point out subtle sexism in movies to me. And I'm like, yes, oh God, I've done something right. He's starting to pick up on it and notice
That's
it.
right.
And not in a way even that's just about protecting the girls, but also about better representation for men, which I think is important too. Yeah.
Yeah, that context is really important.
Yes, 100%. So why do we need to be talking about healthy masculinity with like 8 and 10-year-olds?
Yeah. I think that some people can, you know, might feel like, why? Like, this is heavy stuff.
Right. Like, they're too young. Let's wait.
Yeah. But in a moment of great transformation. And so much of the focus of the past 3 years post Me Too has been on the evolution of masculinity. And parents of boys, I mean, it's unescapable, are confronted with terms like toxic masculinity and male privilege and white privilege for parents like me and you. And headlines are just dominated with stories about men behaving badly. And we want boys to know that being a boy is a wonderful thing. And to make every boy's lived experience the best it can be, we've got to be intentional about encouraging their authenticity and helping them develop empathy and educating them on healthy relationships and consent and privilege and having those hard conversations and promoting that emotional literacy and supporting social emotional learning. And so after 20 years of working with men and boys, we know that healthy manhood, this concept of healthy manhood, is the solution. It is the absolute antidote to some of our society's most just dreadful problems: domestic violence, sexual assault, sexual harassment, dating violence, bullying, homophobia, gun violence, school shootings, male suicide. It's all tied together. And at the root of all of those problems is what we call the man box. And our CEO, Tony Porter, coined that term way back when to illustrate how boys are socialized to view manhood and what society says it means to be a man. So, for example, men, and I know you know this, but for the folks who've tuned in, men and boys are expected to be strong and aggressive and dominant and powerful and athletic, and to be providers and protectors and decision makers and leaders. And these qualities are wonderful, but what happens if a boy falls short? Well, a lot of the time they get shamed for not being man enough, right? So we see these teachings reinforced in things that we say all the time. Big boys don't cry, man up, don't act like a girl, he needs to be a man. So those things tell our boys that it's not okay, that it's not really even safe to show emotion or to be afraid. So we know that we live in a culture where the man box still dominates, where it polices boys, where it demands that it obeys their rules, and it punishes them when they fall short. So this socialization, what we want folks to take away is that this socialization, unless we push back against it, it really leaves our boys vulnerable to depression and anxiety, suicide, high-risk behaviors like vaping and alcohol, drugs, violence towards other people and towards themselves, gender-based violence and violence against themselves, And the Book of Dares is a tool that we can use to push back against that, to promote healthy manhood and authenticity.
Hallelujah.
So have you seen some of this with has this snuck in yet with your son? You said it has a little bit.
It has a bit, yes. But it's fun to watch in the way that I had a lot of anxiety about it at first, you know, because you have them to a certain point and then you have to send them out into the world and to school. And you know that that's when, you know, it's going to be coming at them from all sides. And you can't protect them all the time. But what was cool for me to watch is the things that I have tried to teach him starting to play out. And then you watch them have character. And then you watch them come up against these things and make a different choice, you know, and go, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to think that way. Well, no, I'm more than that. And he's gotten that way, you know, about his hair. He wants his hair long. You know, he's starting to ask more questions in school about leadership and like women in leadership and making sure like everything's equal. But I think I've also been conscious of always giving him a choice. Like even at Christmas time, you know, I'll buy him the toys that he asked for, and then I'll just throw in a few, I don't know, My Little Ponies or like a Polly Pocket or something, and I won't say anything. I'll just leave it there. And, you know, sure enough, he'll be over there in the corner playing with Polly Pocket for like an hour because no one told him that he was supposed to do that. And he had the option and he went for the Polly Pocket. Sometimes he goes for the cars. You know, he's still very much like quintessentially such a boy, you know, but yeah, every now and then, like he knows that he has a choice and he knows he's in a place where nobody's gonna judge him or tell him, oh, that's a girl's toy. Because
right.
what the hell is a girl's toy? You know, it's a piece of plastic. So yeah, it's definitely something I'm conscious of, but it's been cool to watch him push against any of that toxicity. We'll see how middle school goes.
Middle school's pretty tricky, I'm not gonna lie. Like Jackson's 7th grade. I will tell you, you know, you're triggering me on these. We've talked a lot as we started talking about the book about these healthy masculinity milestones. And one of the ones that happened in 5th grade that I love sharing a story about, and I'd love to ask you about, and you kind of just shared a couple, but it made me think about this one. So in the 5th grade, Jack and his group of friends had really bonded playing on this basketball team together, the Runnin' Rebels. And they'd just gotten really close. And it was super fun to watch. And they just had a big time. And so it's really common here in Texas. I don't know if it is everywhere, but in the 5th grade, there's typically like an all-grade theater production that everybody has to participate in. So the starters of the basketball team decided to go out for the lead roles in the theater production. And it was the best little theater in town was the show that they put on. And they got, Jack included, they got the lead roles. And so it was wild to see this group of very athletic, sporty boys who had had this singular experience together and like high-fiving and booty slapping and, you know, all sport all the time, go do this other thing where they were on stage together. They were singing, they were dancing, they were supporting each other in a totally different way. And it was just a wonderful example of healthy manhood in action. And I was so proud that they didn't feel limited to this one experience and that they felt like they could go do this other thing together too. So I thought that was a great example of a healthy manhood milestone, and what you were telling me about your son made me think of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those things are so important. I think it's also, you know, thinking about what you were saying about this shame that's placed upon boys that they have to be tough and like they can't be hurt and they can't cry and these things, and sometimes that turns into like anger against or harm against another person. And in my experience, I've also noticed that also turns into, if a man or a boy is hurt, they're not going to tell anybody. So like it also leaves them wide open for abuse as well. And like and that's why I think things go so underreported. certain things aren't even identified as abuse in a boy's mind because they're just supposed to be tough. And that, to me, that's another reason why I love A Call to Men so much, and like all the work that you guys do, you know, bringing boys into the conversation and seeing them as whole people. I love it.
No, you're absolutely right. You know, one of the things, one of the primary teachings of the Man Box that we try to push up against is that boys should not ask for, offer, or accept help. And that ask for help is exactly what you're getting at right there with your comment about, you know, if something happens to them, they shouldn't ask for help. So, you know, what happens there is that, you know, the Man Box teaches them that they should have everything out under control, that they should figure everything out on their own. And that can just create this damaging cycle of harm. It can also make boys feel really insecure and ashamed and lonely. And we give a real life example, you know, when we do trainings, we give a real life example, and we use it in our curriculum too. And it's funny because it's kind of come to life for me in a little way, and I'll get to that in a minute. But we use this example of a middle school, just think of a middle school boy named Michael. And Michael's having trouble in science class, but he doesn't ask for help because he doesn't want to look dumb, because the Man Box says he should know it all. But because he doesn't ask for help, he fails a test. And because he fails a test, he starts to doubt himself and thinks he's not smart. And because he doubts himself, he quits trying. And by the way, trying hard's not cool either. You know, it's not cool to try hard.
Right.
And because he's not trying hard, he has a bad semester and he gets kicked off the basketball team. And then he starts hanging out with some kids who are making poor choices. And then he starts making poor choices. And he gets in trouble with the police, and then he gets suspended. And then his future's in real jeopardy. And that is what we call the cycle of consequences. And that's a really very real scenario for some boys. And I had somebody, I used that example in a conversation recently, and I had a lady, she was like, no way, all over a science test. And I was like, you know, I listened, and I kind of walked away from that conversation thinking, well, no, we use this example all the time. You know, it's like based in reality. But she kind of put some doubt in my mind. And sure enough, a couple weeks ago, this has been a crazy school year. I mean, I know it has for everybody. So Jack we've had 3 iterations of school. We started virtual, then we went to half days and cohorts, and he's now in school full time, but probably not for much longer. We'll see how long that lasts. But anyway, there's been a lot of adjustments. And Jack is a great student, straight A student, but he came home a couple weeks ago and had done poorly on a science test, of all things. And he got in the car and he was super down on himself. And he literally told me, I don't think I'm smart anymore. And I was so shocked that it was playing straight out of the A Call to Men playbook. Like, I couldn't believe it. And, you know, he has 2 parents who rally around him, and, you know, we're talking all the time and have resources to support him. And he's a privileged kid. So, you know, we'll make sure that he's feeling that support, and that, you know, he knows that he's a smart kid and this is just like a setback and who knows what. But it just became so real in that moment, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Grades are not a reflection of who you are as a learner or as a student. If anything, it's a reflection of the systems that you have in place. It has nothing to do with how smart you are. And that was something that I learned that I wish I had known when I was a kid.
Well said.
These outside, you know, markers that, you know, make us judge ourselves in that way. Oh God, the other thing I loved listening to Tony Porter talk about, you know, was accountability and what that looks like, and how, you know, we have to leave space for not just accountability, but healing as well. And I think, you know, of course, there are definitely things that had to, Eve Ensler said this actually, like we've had our moment where we had to call men out, and it had to be done. But now we have to call men in. And now after accountability, we have to start figuring out what healing looks like after that. Aside from like the sociopaths and the psychopaths and, you know, people that can't be reformed, but really thinking about what this might look like, and a different way of viewing accountability and healing for men that have been socialized in that way, that might not have had an opportunity to learn a different way or to be a different way, you know, or to have that that nurturing aspect.
Yeah.
I just loved it. If you guys get a chance, go look up any like Tony Porter talk or discussion and fall into the rabbit hole like I did.
Thank you. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, you can find his TED Talk on our website at A Call to Men, but hurt people hurt people. You know, there's that piece, and then there's also the socialization piece that for the majority of people is what allows gender-based violence and discrimination to persist. And that's really what we are working to shift culture. And we know that if we can get to this younger demographic, if we can keep going younger and younger, we can keep making an impact in our culture. So we really want to encourage families, not just families. We want to encourage anybody who has a young boy in their life to order the Book of Dares. It's available. We've got the link in our Instagram bio, or you can go to our website at www.acalltomen.org. It's featured on our homepage. In January, we will have a free downloadable discussion guide for parents and educators and mentors. Anybody who wants to read the book with boys in their lives. And honestly, y'all, if you've heard something today that's like tugged on you a little bit and you want to support our work educating boys on healthy manhood and gender equity, you can always donate to A Call to Men and do that at our website. It's been a crazy year for a lot of people, and we have seen that our work is more important now than ever. So any gift of any size is always appreciated. And finally, Evan, thank you so much for this time and for you using your platform to talk about these issues, for supporting the work of A Call to Men, for the boy mom that you are. I feel a kinship with you and appreciate all the work you do to advance the safety and equity of women and girls. Thank you.
Same. Thank you for all the work you do as well. And thank you for this book. I can't wait for everybody to get a copy.
All right, my friend. We'll do it again soon.
Good to talk to you. Thanks for showing up, guys. Thanks for listening.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.